Good evening, Freedmen family, Reparationists, allies, and guests. Welcome to our Season 1, Episode 11 finale of the Religion and Reparations Power Hour, the rare power hour, the most powerful hour on the web. Live from Capitol Hill, D.C., I'm co-host and co-producer Kelly Matthews. I'm joined by Team Rare co-host Derrick Williams, Arthur Ward, and Natalie Rozelle in production. Rare panelist Cynthia McDonald is with us in spirit as she is unable to join us tonight, but she will be back on deck in the spring 2023 Rare Season 2 broadcast. But tonight, by popular demand, we are doing another family roundtable. Nevertheless, we're going to jump right into this, give you an opportunity to like and share. We are on all social media platforms, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Please like and share this video. And we're going to just basically jump right into it tonight. As you know, we at Rare intersect religion and reparations in an effort to engage and activate fellow freedmen, allies, and to increase the overall public opinion and political will to advance the reparations movement. To our awesome audience, thank you so much for joining us again. And we're going to jump right in to Reverend Ralph Abernathy. The day he took over of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference in 1968, right after Dr. King was assassinated. I stumbled upon this video, and I thought it was fascinating how our ancestors' political posturing is a 180 from what we're doing now, and they were under a much heavier onslaught of oppression and racism and segregation. Reverend Abernathy spoke powerfully about withholding, I will say that again, withholding our vote for the presidential election that would have Spiro Agnew as the vice president and Nixon running at the top of the ticket. And at the time, LBJ was still in office. And even though, as we all know, Dr. King had several meetings with President Lyndon Baines Johnson, Abernathy was quite clear that if the likes of Strom Thurmond was playing puppet master behind the scenes, or Daley from Chicago, that the Black community would withhold our vote. He wasn't saying that we were needing to get out souls to the polls and vote like our life depended on it for the lesser of two evils. He was clear that we would only be voting for friendly Congresspeople. Natalie, could you cue Reverend Abernathy and the SCLC conference response?
For the organization.
At the present time, there is no enthusiasm among Negroes for Nixon. Because he has demonstrated that he is controlled by men like Strom Thurmond. But there may be less enthusiasm. I said, but there may be less enthusiasm for Hubert Humphrey. For fear that he will be controlled by Mayor Daley in Chicago and Senator Eastland in Mississippi and Lyndon Baines Johnson, who is presently in the White House. And as Black people and poor people, we are not going to let Thurmond dictate us, neither are we going to let LBJ Daley and the rest dictate to us.
Dr. Abernathy endorsed no other candidate, but he said Negro votes hold the balance of power in the South. He said Negroes might boycott the presidential elections, but would work for the election of friendly congressmen. Militancy in politics, he's made it plain, is a major new direction for the organization. Robert Shackney, CBS News, Memphis.
Family, our ancestors were not get along mealy mouth, clout chasing shills. They were clear on the mission. They were clear. If you weren't with us, you were against us. And they were not trying to have souls to the polls to vote for the lesser of two evils. He even said LBJ. Now, at this moment, he didn't care about the meetings with Dr. King. If he wasn't coming correct, Reverend Abernathy said, don't come at all. What are your thoughts on that, brothers?
Well, as a person on this panel that was actually living through that, I'm going to say this. You know what? Black people at that time, just on a regular basis, were a lot more active in politics than it seems like we are now. And it might be because of the position that we were in the country was a lot more compelling. We had actual segregation going on. Now, well, we still have segregation going on, but it was more overt then. We even had overt segregation going on in Chicago. They didn't have signs up, but you knew where you couldn't go and where you could go. And so the heat was on. The heat was on us as Black people, and the heat was on politicians to do this or that. And then there was a third heat, because you also got to remember that was still in the middle of the time when we were still establishing allies with countries that were just released 10 years ago from colonial powers. So it was a whole lot going on there. And every politician had to balance himself in some way. And this is also at the point where the racists were having having less and less influence on the general political atmosphere at the time. So with Reverend Abernathy saying that, he was actually putting a lot of heat on all the presidential candidates at the time.
Yeah, I mean, I gotta agree. Like, I agree with everything that was said. Like, some of it I think was due to the circumstance, like you said. The subjugation was overt, and it forced people essentially to be together, whether they would want to or not. It became a collective, almost a form of homogeny. I want to stay away from that a bit, but it pushed us to depend on one another, to work together, right?
Yeah.
And along with that, what you can hear, what he's saying is that there's a direction of the politics at that time, right? And some form of identity, right, with regards to trying to figure out which way to take folks or navigate folks, that I don't think we have in the same way now.
No.
So to be able to have a reverend say, we're going to hold our vote is, I mean, I don't want to say that it's impossible now, because it's not impossible. I'm sure there's somebody that has sentiment like that, but I dare say that the party is so much more intertwined in with our community and the churches. That point that Arthur B. You chime in on a lot of times, and so I think that's kind of the difference. It'd be very difficult to find somebody who's going to be a prominent reverend, right? Even the brother who's leading the Poor People campaign. I'm lost for words right now, right? I don't think you're going to have him say something like that. It's because that is almost too radical for the time frame that we in right now.
Well,
or it appears that way. It ain't too radical.
I don't look at that as being radical. I think that's just being American. I mean, you got white white ringers that have the same tone in terms of the direction in which they want to vote. And let me expand this a little bit. It wasn't just the churches. It wasn't just the people in church. What he was speaking of was actually a general political tone that was throughout the Black community, even amongst those Black people that were not in church. Okay, because that was a conversation in the street at the time. That was a conversation in my house where I was growing up at my grandmother's house. And, because of the fact that, a lot of time we speak a lot about being on code. What Black people were doing was a great example of being on code at the time. Being on code does not mean that you agree with everything that I say. It doesn't mean that at all. It also doesn't mean that I necessarily like all the people in my group. But what it does mean is that there's certain general things that we have to come together on. And being on code is about group survival.
Right.
That's what it's really about. Okay. I might not like you. You understand what I'm saying? But if you went out there and killed a policeman, a white policeman, let's make that clear. The police come out, I'm not going to say nothing to them. You understand what I'm saying? Because I'm going to be on code. Now, if you kill somebody Black, that's a different story. But you understand?
Yeah.
But
100%.
You understand what I'm saying? That's exactly what the Jews are doing to Kanye. They're being on code. They're being on code. As a matter of fact, we can learn a whole lot from what's happening right now.
And a lot of that stems from lack of confusion in your identity.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
You said it a lot better than me. I agree with everything you were saying. I guess the basic thing for me that when I heard that clip is I'm like, there's a sense, a collective sense of knowing who we are, right? Even if we don't know what all the solutions are for this, we know we're going to stick together, right? And we're going to talk about certain issues, like you said, that are in different parts of the community, and we're going to address that accordingly.
Right.
So to me, it's like we're trying to develop that again right now. That was lost.
Right.
I dare say, but I'm going to go ahead and say it, through the last 30 or 40 years, my generation is largely apolitical. That is an archive. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. You get the Public Enemy, and then that's almost where the buck almost stops, unless you're a part of a very fringe, part of our community.
Right.
So everything else becomes tied in to the two-party system, right?
Right.
Like I said, like that infusion. So I'm not saying that it wasn't there before. That element was there, but it was a process for us to even get involved with the Democrats versus the Republicans, right?
True.
So that in itself also gives you a certain lens of perspective where you're going to look at things and say, we're together in this. That this is for the collective good. It's just a collective sense. And I feel like that's probably it, bro. We lost a lot of that collective sense.
Yeah, and you know what the other thing is, like, what I mean, the other thing that I mean, like, we was on code more so then than we are now, is because even though you had the Nation of Islam here, you had the SCLC here, you had CORE here, you had the youth groups,
SNCC,
like with CORE, SNCC, all that. Even though they had different opinions about how we should
the Pullman Porters,
Pullman Porters, the goal for everybody was the same. This is why Elijah Muhammad would never say anything negative in public about Martin Luther King. Never.
And just elaborate a little bit for people who are watching. What was the goal?
The goal was being full Americans. That was the general goal.
Right.
Being full Americans. So, because of the fact that we are all being impinged on by the same forces in the same way, naturally, no matter where we are, whether we were atheists, whether we're Muslim, whether we're Christian, we were going to be on code because it's the same impingement that is causing us the same suffering as a people, as a group.
Absolutely.
Arthur, you made a great segue mentioning Kanye. Talking about being on code.
Yeah.
Kanye claims he lost 2 billion with a B in one day because of his anti-Semitic remarks.
His remarks weren't anti-Semitic.
I'm reading the title of this article.
Yeah.
And even in looking at things on the web about Kanye, I'm seeing that the Jewish Holocaust Museum says that, you know, they've been targeted phone calls, and the anti-Semitic calls are have ratcheted up since the Kanye conversation. But Kanye was saying all kinds of things about all kinds of people when nobody cared about any of it until he crossed the imaginary line of anti-Semitic language.
Well, see, that's hypocritical on the Jewish people's part, because he was saying all of these things on Jewish-owned platforms. You know, certain kinds of rap music that is being distributed to our children are mostly owned by companies that are owned by that particular group. They have nothing to say about that. He was talking about more so relationship that we have with powers, not them in particular. It's just that they are the most familiar in terms of that, especially in the area of media. And they can put out content. I mean, these same Jewish people, and I can show you the papers, have written many papers against reparations. Some of them coming out of the University of Chicago. So you're going to write papers like that and then tell me that a guy that's saying some words, they say he's bipolar, that hasn't hurt anybody, all of a sudden you guys are all sensitive, call all your friends and try to shut this guy down. To me, in actuality, he has a big opportunity here. Russell Simmons is trying to reach out to him. He's still got plenty of money, and his Yeezys are still selling. So he actually has an opportunity to start his own lines.
He has a great opportunity if he wants to get out of being owned.
Yeah.
If he wants to be a real owner, that might mean you're not a billionaire with a B. That means you just a baller with a B. Black baller kind of money. Maybe you just a millionaire, but you start your own network.
Yeah.
And you have your own branding. I find it, ironic that, people like Nick Cannon, Whoopi Goldberg.
Yeah.
I mean, the list goes on and on. But these are people, I mean, with star power, that if they started one thing that, they would bring masses of freedmen to that platform. And once we set something off, we set the trends and the tone in the country anyway, as far as culturally in that vein.
But
why don't they do their own thing? Why can't they pull together and do their own thing?
I am not sure about that,
they can.
because maybe, but you know what? But let's look at Whoopi. Whoopi said. What Whoopi said,
that wasn't anti-Semitic.
Even according to some Jews that wrote articles about it, that wasn't anti-Semitic. Yeah. It's just her view of what happened based upon her experience as a Black person.
Meanwhile, slavery is about everything, or the Civil War was about everything but slavery.
Exactly.
It was state rights. It was kangaroos. It was everything.
Right. But if you mention that Judah Benjamin, who was the third Secretary of State of the Confederacy, was Jewish, you mention that's anti-Semitic.
Yeah. And
or Aaron Lopez.
Exactly.
Aaron Lopez,
exactly.
People. Al Jolson.
Al Jolson, Mr. Blackface himself.
Yeah.
Another Jewish person.
I want to say one thing though, y'all. So for me, the way I look at it is, first of all, what Kanye said, he might have said it in a particular way, but it's been said before. He's not the first person to say that, right?
Yeah.
He also said the obvious. So I didn't really see it as it being a big deal so much, or necessarily being revolutionary
Right.
or rebellious, right?
Yeah.
But Kanye knew what he was doing, and he understands what type of power structure he's dealing with. So I'm not really empathetic about the circumstance. What I'm actually doing is actually observing once again how the Jewish community has created an almost type of how they created the politics that they created, right? And this mechanism that they've created that puts them in a position where you can use a word that is sometimes is obscure, really. I mean, because anti-Semitic, I mean, people of Muslim descent, those are all Semitic people too, right? At the end of the day, but they're able to basically take a term that is it's not specific, like black, right? But they can coin it for themselves, and they're able to use the power behind that, being in the place that they're in politically, to actually enforce that on people. So like I said before, I might have said it on this show, at one point in time, myself and my girlfriend had sent a poll around social media to see who had a problem with the N-word, right, at the end of the day, and who didn't, who thought it was more cultural, who would want to get rid of it. And what I explained to her is that for those who want to get rid of it, we would have to build a political mechanism or apparatus similar to what we see with the Jewish community. I think Naeem has also spoken on this too. So you use the term like Hamitic or whatever, and that would be a reference for anything that would be anti-black, but it goes further than that. It's something specific regards to a particular group of people, right? The ethnic aspect of that. Right. So I kind of just see it as, at the end of the day, is that it's a hyper situation. I mean, I'm aware of situations where they're trying to write laws where you can't even speak against Israel. Right. And if you speak against Israel, then that can be considered anti-Semitic. Well, but I also see it like this, bro, and you may or may not agree with this. That's a strong politics.
Yeah, but you know what? See, but in actuality, I'm going to tell you what they're doing. If they succeed in that, okay, if they succeed in that, they are actually going to create a dangerous situation for themselves. Because look at what's happening right now. Now, Kanye said his little piece, right? Okay, now you're starting to see all of these people that were bottled up, and the corks are popping out of these pressurized bottles. You understand? You know, how is it that you get to be the only group that can't be criticized? Check this out. Now, there's a post that I'm in the middle of writing that'll be put up in a couple of days because I haven't finished it yet. But this is what I wrote about the Jews. I said, check this out, family. The same minds that ran and occupied Nazi Germany are the same minds that run and occupy the United States. The only exception is that the Jewish community in the United States has always and up till now been a part of the American white power structure.
Facts.
All right. Now, at the same time, just like the majority of white people in this country are anti-black, those same people are also anti-Semitic. The only working difference is that because the Jewish community is a vital component of the financial, political, scientific, intellectual, and propaganda infrastructure that helps to run the systems and complete the objectives of white supremacy, the foundational white elite will always protect this community from the open racists and anti-Semites that want to literally kill them, just as long as they stay on code and retain their particular functionality within the power structure. Is anything anti-Semitic about that?
I think if people research the subject, especially as it results to the Jewish community in this country, like from its inception, they're gonna find what you said is absolutely true.
Yeah.
What they did in Germany is try to create a racial distinction, right? Exactly. You don't have the same thing happen here. No. So there, to be a Jew, they basically created a separate race.
Right.
Here, it was assimilation.
Yes.
Right.
Exactly.
And that people were involved all along. To some degree, they may have hid it. In some degree, they didn't. And in some degree, you have a portion of the conservative religious segment of America that also will, it's not so much the Jewish community, but what they're doing is they're coddling the idea of an Israel, right? And everything that's connected with their belief with regards to Jesus and the resurrection. So
yeah, you're right. You're right. Exactly.
I'm saying a segment, not
Because-
all of them, because then you got
the
some people
Jews
who don't care
themselves-
about none of that.
Right, because the Jews themselves, over 70% of them are atheists.
Yeah. So the thing that ties it in for the Gentile or the Goy, right, is essentially those who are believers in Jesus, that is, right, and Yahweh. It's essentially that essentially there can't be a second coming of the Messiah without there being a part of the Jewish collective taking a role in that, right? Including the rising of a Jewish state or nation, which we have today. So that plays into the whole Zionist thing, which they're not necessarily religious, but they use the background of religion, right, to move the social political propaganda forward, right, or agenda forward.
Exactly. You know, but see, you know, the other thing that I like about the Kanye West thing is that I look at that as the flag that tells the Black community we need to get our stuff together so that we can divest from the Jewish community. And also divest from the Koreans and all these other communities that are sucking all the money out of our community. We have to get, and this is not their fault. I have nothing against any group trying to keep themselves on top. But look, we got to get in the game. And that's what the real problem is. I believe that the fact that we have not gotten far enough as far as reparations is 75% our fault.
Michael Hicks.
I don't know if I can put a percentage, but I would have to. I'm with you though.
Michael Hicks in the chat says we're only 150 to 200 years, and where we've had agency to respond. We haven't built our infrastructure up like that, meaning comparing us to the Jewish community. And I agree with that, but every time we try to build our infrastructure up like that, Oklahoma, Black Wall Street, Rosewood, I mean, all across the country, when we tried to build up like that, Black excellence was burned. It was lynched. It was flooded. It was destroyed. So it's not like, it's not from a lack of trying. It's not from a lack of effort. However, you know, how do we, as a powerless, wealthless group, flex in these spaces? I mean, the only thing we have is our political cachet, and that we generally, when we do vote, we move elections, but we tend to not do it in a strategic way because we're listening to these lesser of two evil, mealy mouth leaders that so-called speaking on our behalf. I mean, how do we do that? I mean, we talk about the Jewish community, a white group that also is a minority. Then we think about the city council in LA, the Hispanics, another white group that also gets to play minority. I mean, it's amazing how
we can't sit on our hands because, you know, the way we're looking now, because we are not as useful to white supremacy as we were before 1964. And you got the Hispanics who would love to bury us. Okay, we can't afford to sit on our hands. We got to ramp up real fast. We got to do the same thing that we did when we were released from slavery. We got to do another one of those. Otherwise, we ain't gonna be around. That's where we are right now.
I agree. 100%. You know, 100%. So shout out to Brother Hicks. That's Brother Michael Hicks. Yeah, I mean, we definitely haven't had the opportunity to do it, but I still would agree, you know, constructive criticism. I would agree with Arthur that there are things, there's more that we could have done, and we just haven't developed that all the way yet. See, when I look at us, I think about us as the development of a people group, and then the evolution and the ongoing story of a people group. So I agree with what Brother Hicks said, but I also would agree with Arthur too, that there's things that we haven't done to this point that we could have done, right?
Yeah.
Those might not have been the focuses for one reason or another. And then also this is developmental. So you may try certain things and go with that. They seem like they're going to work. They don't really work out the way you think. You got, you have to restructure that,
Well, it's
right?
mostly a mind thing because, we got Cynthia saying, well, you can do that when you have capital. Yeah, you can do that when you start giving your capital away. We got a beauty supply over there on 55th in the damn Rhine where I used to have a store at. Lim's Beauty Supply, Korean. 99% of their clientele is black. They make $1 million a month.
Right.
It's coming out of our pockets. What do you mean we don't have the capital? We give churches $300 million a week.
Right.
It's not a question of not having it. It's a matter of deploying more intelligently as a group what we do have. Because everybody else is getting it. We done sent thousands of Korean children to college. Sorry. Please. Let's make some sense of this.
Yeah, I think it's a combination, man.
Yeah.
I had this conversation with a brother the other day. And he was making the same point that you was making. I was explaining to him, I said, when if you're more in the business district, if you midtown or uptown, things change a little bit. You know what I'm talking about, Kelly. But if you're on the south side, if you're in southwest or southeast, that is primarily a community, right? It's not really a business district there. So the idea that you're not going to go to a gas station because the person who owns it is non-black, or you're not going to go to 7-Eleven, the options ain't there like that. You know what I'm saying? So I was trying to explain to him, I said, we're in some cases, we already locked in a situation where if some people who of Arab descent, as an example, may run the gas stations in the area, right? You may have Ethiopians who run the 7-Elevens, right? The carryouts are ran by people who may be Chinese or even Koreans, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then newspapers, even though a lot of folks ain't doing that anymore, might be Eastern Indians. I mean, you got a dilemma going on there that even if you wanted to say, okay, you know what? I want to practice group empowerment. I want to go ahead and buy from someone that's black. Can you find a gas station that's owned by black folks? How far would you have to drive in the area of Southwest or Southeast DC to do that, right?
Exactly.
So it's I think it's a combination of things where, like you said, it is about us being choosy where we spend our money, particularly when we have the choice, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then trying to establish building something, right? But then on the flip side, in some places, we done already got so far that it would really take for somebody to say, you know what, I'm gonna build a gas station right next to this mug to challenge them if I had the money to do so. You know what I'm saying? Because in that area, you ain't gonna have enough people that's basically giving the consumer the choice between the two.
Oh, there's a lot of intelligent things that can be done. It's just like I saw a video. It was not here, but there was a Middle Easterner that owned a gas station, and he was particularly rough with his black customers, and they didn't like it. So the alderman canceled his business license.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was a collective of black people that lived in the area that put their money together and bought that gas station. They still have it.
Right.
Okay. So you're gonna tell me in the most essential things that we need done in this country, the same people that will put their money together and build a brand new church, they exist. I've seen it in Chicago. There's one particular Trinity. They got that money together quick, these black people, and built a church.
Right.
I think the church was like about 30 million, something like that. Yeah, we found that money in the church. But for a grocery store that we could corporatize, and that the people that contributed the money can be shareholders. I mean, we don't have any more. It's funny how we have all this creativity in music, but we miss that using that same creativity to capture the essentials that we need to bring ourselves together as a community. This is just weird to me.
I'm a push back, not because I disagree, because I'm gonna engage the chat. Our sister Cynthia made a great point. Our panelist that is at a conference and can't make it, but she's definitely participating.
Yeah.
She said capital also comes with being able to supply certain goods and services. Koreans had the government, our government, that allowed them to be that supply. And you even said in your point that the aldermen government got involved again with the gas station.
Sure.
So every time we are even able to get a foothold, it is because somebody in government was leading the charge for us. Even if we did on the back end put some money together, we had to kill the other business for the other one to stand in its stead and thrive. So, I mean, even with the Korean situation, yes, they may make that kind of money at the B&B, but that's telling you that black folks are doing their own hair. They're not they don't have the money for the beauticians. They're buying those products and doing kitchen curls, you know. And so so it is not that we're spending our money wrong, because that's what you do when you don't have money to do your hair. You do your own hair. You do your sister's hair. You do your cousin's hair.
Okay, but at the same time, we're able to build churches. We build churches.
Yeah,
we do,
yeah.
And it's all with black money. So
what else are we? I mean, let's think about Dr. Claude Anderson. His idea was we love seafood, and I think per capita, or we eat the most seafood in our demographic, and that's when he started his fish farm or whatever. But he was cut out the game because he didn't have the supply of the fish, the tilapia or whatever he was trying to grow in his fish farm. Because he was cut out that game again by the Asian community that owns that particular industry. So even when we put our money together, we're cut out unless government earmarks something for us, the way they have done for Asians in the beauty supply. The way they've done apparently in the seafood industry. I mean, there's just some industries where certain groups run and control, and they have the foothold there. I mean, we're complaining about maybe Jewish control in entertainment. That's a real thing. They pretty much run and own Hollywood. So
yeah. No, go ahead.
So, I mean, and even with that, I mean, we're sitting here and we're going to probably get shadow banned just for conversating about this, just for being citizens, talking about what's happening to us. We're going to get shut down.
I still, but for some reason, Kelly, I just don't think that we are totally handcuffed.
I'm not saying we're totally handcuffed.
I agree with you to an extent, but even with the building the church for $30 million. We in 15 major cities. That don't even count the outskirts. Even if people practice that, you're not going to get the outcome that we would hope to see behind that. That's not enough businesses in a 5 or 10 square mile radius. That $30 million. Like what I'm trying to say is that, okay, so you can build one gas station to compete. Now, what you have to be able to do is build more and more to be able to do that, right? I just don't see that as being like, I don't see the connection between, okay, well, we were able to build a church here. We can continue to build gas stations. All these communities can't raise 30 million for a church. You know what I'm saying? So I can see what you're saying as far as, well, you could take your money from building a church and build something else with regards to the community, right?
Yeah.
Even something that creates capital.
Because money is money. I mean,
yeah.
You know,
but what I also want to say is you do have some black businesses, like over where I used to live in Southwest, you got black organic vegan vegetarian restaurants and stuff. This is all black owned and stuff. It's modern, it looks nice and stuff, you know what I mean? Goes in there, it's clean, the food is, you know what I mean? But that just isn't gonna do it. That's not gonna do it. The black folks own the auto zones over there and the CVS's and the Burger Kings and all that. Those are franchises too. We don't have to create those to own those. I'd be willing to bet they don't. In some cases, I'd be willing to bet there's some black folks that do, particularly in this area, a place like Chicago, because there's a high concentrate. But majority of that stuff is probably not owned by us. We running it though.
Yeah.
If other people ain't running it, we in Papa John's until somebody else replaces us. You feel me?
Right.
But we don't necessarily own it.
Right.
Yeah, it's my opinion. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. But you know, and I understand the point that Kelly made about the burn downs and all this other stuff. But I do think that it takes a change in our general mentality in order to break through this, because I don't believe that we're handcuffed. We're not rich, but we got some cash flow that feeds businesses, and these businesses are owned by other people that take that cash flow and they flow it right out of our community, just like over at Limbs. The reason why I know about how much Limbs gets is because when I had my store, which was across the way in that same mall, I actually hired an expert to watch that store. And the way that they do it is like they calculate the average purchase.
Walk in. Oh, okay.
Yeah, and how many bags are coming out the store.
As we're about to I guess get on our last 10 minutes, how do we collectively gather the little bit of power that we have and get on code, whatever that is, to move the needle? Because unless we do it unified, nothing happens.
It's happening right now.
It is.
Actually, it's happening right now. And by virtue that things are going to be a downward spiral, it's going to continue. Right. So really, this is what I see anyway. So really what we did is we planted our feet in the dirt several years before the snowball actually hits the log cabin, if you will, right? Mm-hmm. And as things start to spiral for people, they're not only going to be asking questions that they weren't asking before, but they're also going to be looking for solutions. So there will be people there, information there, and to some degree, some form of apparatus there for people to actually gravitate towards. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what's going to allow us to build a new politics with regards to our collective. I don't think that it's going to happen the way that we need it to happen any other way without there being some pressure. Right? Yeah. It's going to have to be some things that fall out the buckets. The bottom's got to fall out of the bucket for people to recognize how serious things are.
I think reparations is still the point of unity in these times for us, because it's not just reparations, but people are going to be thinking about and talking about extensions to that. How are we preparing ourselves to properly receive our reparations? What are we going to do after we get them? Are we going to stay in our communities, buy them, and build them up? Or are we going to do something else? So I think that the big unifier is us continuing to talk about reparations. Also, Pharaoh, he did a reparations video about a couple of days ago. I think you guys ought to check out, and he makes a very good point that in actuality, we need to stop talking about people joining particular groups and talk about what you want. And what you want is reparations. And he used the example of the gay community in which, and when they were advocating for gay marriage, in which they downplayed their individual organizations, of which, you know, there are hundreds of them across the United States. The one thing that they was talking about was what they wanted, which was gay marriage. And that's the only message that you heard until they got it. And I think we can take a lesson from that. He was saying that there's way too much bickering between organizations and groups, and we need to be just talking about reparations. So I do think that reparations is the big unifier if we do it right.
I don't know. I don't know. I see a lot of people thinking, let me get my check and divest from Blackness, because now I have enough money to be able to get my capital, to go do my own business, to be individual, to succeed over my brother now. I see that we're not ready yet right away to, if we got this check tomorrow, it would, I don't see us unified through that money. I think money, if anything, is going to exacerbate problems that are already there. So we need to solve and provide solutions for some of those problems now before we do get that money in our pocket. Not saying that we don't deserve it or we shouldn't get it, but just saying that I think that there's some things that we need to work on before we do that. Otherwise, there is no community. I mean, the way that I see, you know, Sister Fate had said something about being united through our trauma in a way, and the things that had been done to us. Yet, and that's why we're so good at the arts and the music, you know, because we're literally taking that pain and commodifying it, you know. But I think that we need to be, you know, we need to set up some things and get ourselves ready in order to make sure that when we do have this money, that we can build our communities, our businesses, our infrastructures, and whatever we are going to do.
No,
that's my opinion.
You know what? I mean, and I know exactly the kind of people that you're talking about. Yeah, we got a few nuts like that in Chicago, but the overall majority of Black people, they're seeing the writing on the wall too. Even people that are not involved with reparations, they're seeing what the Hispanics are doing. They're seeing what other groups are doing. They're seeing what the government is doing, and I think there's going to be a lot of pressure within our community to further come together and really make something out of ourselves as far as a better community. So I see the opposite happening with reparations. I think it's going to help to make us a lot better.
I agree with what Mr. Hicks said. Yeah. Go ahead.
He's on it. Don't confuse activity for achievement.
Right.
Establish and lock down local relationships with community leaders and local politicians.
That's right.
Hey, we heard you, Hicks. We heard you in the chat.
Look, I'm gonna hit you up,
we heard
Mr.
you in the group
Hicks.
chat the other day, Hicks, where you said, "Don't skip a step. Don't skip them steps, bro." We hear you.
Focus on the mission. Don't pick unnecessary fights that divert energy.
Right.
And this one right here, Mr. Hicks, I would love to get you to work maybe with the DMV Freedmen, because we're trying to do something along these lines. Black-led reparationist organizations need to assemble position papers, Freedmen papers. One thing that we are definitely slated to do, Mr. Hicks, and if you would like to be a part of that committee, I would love for you to work with us, and that's doing a Freedmen Constitution.
Wow, I like that.
And what we want to do is write a draft and float it around to all of the groups. Something that just Freedmen can believe in, regardless of your name, your hashtag, your 501c3 organizational name. Who cares? We are talking as Freedmen. Who are we? Who we are not? Who speaks for us? Who does not? And I think that once we do that and maybe unveil that Constitution at the Juneteenth rally in Washington, D.C., in 2023 that we're trying to bring together, would be a very powerful thing. Release it to maybe the news media and draw the line in the sand. So these people claiming to be freedmen, no, we got an actual definition for that. Right. We have an actual a whole document that says who we are and who we're not and who does not speak for us. I mean, DC right now is trying to move forward with undocumented migrants being able to vote.
Right.
We fighting for the franchise right now. 400 years plus, and we still fighting for the franchise. And just overnight, a whole community gets to jump the border and get every privilege of citizenship that we still don't have.
And our so-called Black representatives are signing off on this shit.
Oh, yeah. They're sponsoring the bill and pushing it through.
Wow. That's incredible. That's just
going back to where we started. Totally different politics. I'm not totally different, but totally different from the Reverend Ralph, right? At the end of the day, it's like the idea that because we are a group and considered a minority, that our politics has to include everybody because of our circumstance. That this can't be centered around what our specific circumstance is. But we're gonna change that. We're gonna change that at the end of the day. And that's not no shade, or that doesn't mean that we're not gonna be there to help other people. We don't care or empathize with other people's circumstance, but it's just about focusing on what our circumstance is.
No, we don't have any time for anybody else. We don't. You know, we've had a long record of helping everybody, and as soon as they get on their damn feet, they gone. No, we ain't doing that no more, man. Fuck that. Fuck them. No. I got grandbabies. I got y'all. We got to get us together, and we don't have any time for anybody else.
Absolutely. I did want to say one thing that Natalie had said earlier. I didn't disagree with what she was saying. Actually, there will probably be a segment of our community that feels that way. I also agree with Arthur on this. We talked, this has been some years now, where Arthur was the one to put in my mind to really understand that if you injected wealth in our communities, a lot of people, especially the older segment of our community, they ain't moving. They're building up their houses, putting equity in them houses, and they're not moving out of those communities, right?
Exactly. I'm telling you, before reparations hit, you better buy stock at Home Depot. Because that's where a lot of that money's going.
Right. That's exactly what you said.
Most black people do not want to live next to white people. The only reason why a lot of them live next to white people is because they have the means and they want the amenities.
Resource. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you understand what I'm saying? But those same amenities would come up in our neighborhood if we had the resources. Redlining stopped all that.
Yeah, absolutely. And stratification economics is kind of what she was touching on. Exactly. Is that, like, even with inside stratification economics, you might want to be the top person in your group, right? But you want your group to be top over other groups.
Exactly.
So that's why I said I can see both things actually taking place, because you're gonna have those cats that's gonna be like, yeah, I'm gonna be, I'm making more money than the rest of y'all Negroes. I'm doing so, but at the same time, they're gonna want their group to be the group that,
because that's how the Jews operate. There's you know what? There are rich Jews and there are middle class Jews at the bottom, okay? But they don't have that kind of in-group elitism. They're all Jews and they're all networked in, okay? And so that's how we have to operate. See, there's a lot of things about, even though they're white, there's a lot of things about how they operate that we can learn and adapt to our particular circumstance, man. And I believe if we did that, along with we would be the most powerful group in America. Not them, not the Hispanics, and the hell with everybody else.
Well, Arthur gets the last word, as usual. That's our hour of power. We look forward to seeing you again, spring 2023. But if you can't join us, or if you have a rare Jones in the midst of that, Natalie has been hard at work putting together rare shorts, rare moments, just takes from rare, teasing out a moment in time that can hold you until the spring. We are likewise putting together a Martin Luther King holiday weekend special that will be entitled MLK. Let me reintroduce myself. So we're going to reintroduce Dr. King the way he actually was, not the way white supremacists want him to be. Right. And we're going to have a whole weekend of Dr. King in his own words, and we're going to dissect the where do we go from here speech. So fam, while we're on hiatus, please hit us up with your questions, comments, and topics that you would like to see address us in season 2, and we will get that in our production schedule. Stay true to the game, Mr. Hicks. Please hit us up. We would love to have you in the arsenal as we're preparing this Constitution. And with that, we will depart by saying peace and love to all. Amen. Ashe. Assalamu alaikum. Shalom. And good night.